In this video, we're going to take a look at conditional formatting. In Excel, we can use the conditional formatting feature to change the format of a cell or a range of cells based on their value or the value of another cell related to them. So here we have a list of about 25 different parts. We've got their price, lead time, order quantity that we're going to expect to come in, and the class of the item. Suppose that these parts are being ordered from one of our vendors, and we want to keep our prices low. So we want to flag all of our parts that are, say, over $80 or something like that. So what we can do is we can change the format of these cells if they are over $80. So we'll come up to another cell over here to the side, and we'll label this to be our max price threshold. And here we'll use the cell styles to denote it as an input, and we'll say $80. Once we've done that, we can come up to this conditional formatting menu here, and we'll choose the highlight cells rules for cells that are greater than. So we'll first select this max price as our cells that are greater than, and we'll leave it with the default light red fill with dark red text. But we can also customize what that is or choose yellow or green as some of the preset options. When we click OK, you'll notice nothing happen. The reason for that is I've selected this cell when I had that conditional formatting option selected. So it's always important to select the cells that you want the formats to apply to. But in case you don't do that right off the bat, you can go to this Manage Rules option here at the bottom, and you can see that it applies to cell H4. If we click this arrow here, we can actually change the range that that applies to. And when we click OK, you'll notice now here all of the prices that are over this threshold are highlighted red. And if I were to lower this threshold to say $50, you will see even more of them get highlighted. And if I raise it to 90, fewer of them will be highlighted. So you can use an input cell to influence your conditional formatting outcome. Let's go through another example, this time for a minimum price. So we want anything that is below this threshold. So if here we change that to $40, we can now select the range of cells we want this format to apply to, choose conditional formatting, and this time we'll choose the less than rule. And in this instance, we're going to do a custom format here. And what we'd like to do is have a fill color of a light green, and notice that we can also change the font, we can change what color it shows up in, we can change and add borders to it. In this case, we'll add a dark green border to the left hand side of the cell. Click OK, and now you'll see right here all of the prices below this minimum are highlighted in green, and notice it's added the border as well. So there are a lot of different formatting options that you can apply when we do this. This would be one way to highlight cells that are within a given range driven by some input cells over to the side. Let's create a couple more inputs over here. We'll call one LT top, meaning lead time top, and LT bottom, meaning lead time bottom. In this case, let's just say that there's a lead time range that we'd like things to be within somewhere between 6 and 12 weeks is a preferred range. So if we select our lead time here, we can go to conditional formatting. We can choose the between rule. And this time, we'll choose cells that are between 6 and 12. And we'll use the green fill that it comes with automatically this time around. We click OK, you'll see these are all of the items that meet this criteria of being between these two items. For our next example, we're going to highlight an item that is equal to a certain value, and for this we'll use our classification here in column F. So we'll format this appropriately. Let's start off with class A, and if we select this, choose conditional formatting, highlight cells rules where it's equal to this cell, and in this case we'll do a custom format. This time we don't want to do anything with the fill color or fonts, but we'd like to do a border that is, let's say, this gold color. We'll click OK, And now you'll see, again, we have these called out within our item list. Let's add one more class example here. We'll just copy this down, Control C and Control V, and we'll choose class B this time around. We'll select this same range, we'll go to conditional formatting, we'll choose highlight cells rules where they're equal to this cell here, and we'll custom format again. This time we'll use a fill color, maybe a light blue. Click OK, click OK. Alright, we have several examples across the page here of conditional formatting. I want to show you, in the beginning, I talked about how we can manage these rules. Here, you'll see if I bring up this rule manager, there's nothing shown because my current selection does not include any rules. But if I expand that to be this worksheet, you'll see the list of all of the rules that I have applied so far. Now, interestingly, these are listed in order, meaning that they will be applied in this order. And, well, rearranging that order won't change anything in this sheet. If there were two rules that overlapped on a same cell, then rearranging the order would change which format would be applied to those cells. So in addition to changing the range that it applies to, like we've shown already, you can also change what the rule is itself. So here we have this cell values greater than cell I3. We could change that to be any one of the other conditions. We could also change it to be a different type of rule, whether it's looking for a specific text, a blank or not a blank, errors or no errors. So for example, if I had it looking for errors, and I would highlight those red, if I click OK here, and then I click OK again, you'll notice nothing is formatted as red. There are no errors. If I were to type in this is an error causing formula, you'll notice that that is now formatted as that dark red because I changed the rule up here in this conditional formatting manage rules option. Another thing that's important to note about conditional formatting is that if I change the value of a cell here, so for example, if I change this to A and change this to B, you'll notice the formatting changes without me having to go click on anything else because it's automatically recognizing against this set of rules that we have here which one should be applied based on the value of a particular cell. The Conditional Formatting Rules Manager also allows us to remove rules or to add new rules right from this page. So for example, if I'll close this and we're going to make a copy of this sheet, what you can do is hold down the Control key, click on the sheet, and drag it over to the side. The other option is you can right click and choose Move or Copy, and then select Create a Copy. Now we have a duplicate of our original sheet here, and on this one I'll go to the Manage Rules option, choose this worksheet, and let's say I don't want to see any more of these red cell contains an error formats. I simply click Delete Rule, and when I click Apply, that formatting will be gone. Another option here, this Stop is If True checkbox. If there were multiple rules that could apply to the same cell, so for example, if this cell here says the cell value is between I6 and I5, and we alter this, instead of applying to column D, we apply it to column C. And we'll just do that by selecting here. And now we click Apply and OK. These prices are higher than our current range here, so let's widen that up a bit and we'll say 40. And the low is 0. Now, nothing additional was highlighted. But this item here should have been highlighted, this 1870, because that's between 0 and 40. So let's take a look at why that's not happening. So if we click on Manage Rules, you see that both of them are applied, but the one that is winning is this one right here. And that's because it's getting this formatting first, but then it applies the next rule in the list, which is this one, and this one is the final one to be applied, so it wins. If you wanted to switch that, you could either reorder them like this, and now this rule would be applied. You could also, though, move this rule back down to where it was. You'll see that it's which one is winning now. And then you could check Stop If True. And what that means is that once it evaluates this rule, if it comes back as true, this condition, then it will not attempt to evaluate the second rule. So if I click Apply, you'll notice the borders on the left-hand side of these have now gone away. And that's because that rule, which applies a left border, is no longer being applied because this first rule is already true. Let's close this dialog box and take a look at some of the other conditional formatting options. Here in this list, we've already covered most of these. The top and bottom rules allow you to highlight the top 10 or top 10% of a given range. So for example, if we look at this order quantity and we choose conditional formatting and we want to see the top 10 items based on their order quantity, we'll choose the yellow fill and we'll click OK. Now this is showing us the top 10 items in this order quantity range. If I go to manage my rules here, you'll see that if I choose edit rule, I can choose to switch it to the bottom 10. I can also choose to show only the top 5 in a given range, or I can see the top 5% of that range. So there are a number of different ways that you can use these conditional formatting rules to be able to show you the items or lines that you're interested in. One of the other rules that we'll try here is this above average rule. And in this case, we'll choose a green. We'll click OK. Now remember, these rules are being applied in order here, and so if it's above the average, it's not going to show this top 5 anymore. So we want to actually rearrange those so that we see the top 5. We'll click Apply. And now we see some are green and some are yellow, and we know that some of these yellows are also green based on what we just changed. However, what's great about this top or average calculation is that the calculation changes every time cell values are updated. So if we update this order quantity to 10,000, you'll see it now changes to be one of the top 5, and our average is so high because it's being pulled up by this 10,000. Everything else is no longer green. So if we calculate what that average is for this particular set, and Excel is doing this in the background, what it's saying is based on this range of data, you would have to be above 444 to be considered a green cell. What if we change this down to 100 though? Now we see green cells again. We can move it up to 1,000, and now we see we're just slightly over where any of our other order quantities are. So maybe we'll do something like 750, and now we see we have some green that are above average, but they're not in the top 5. What's great about all of these conditional formatting rules is that you don't have to do the formula off to the side to get it to figure out these things. Now there are more complex versions that you may want a formula off to the side. For example, there is not an option for a standard deviation measure here. But if we click more rules, we can see that there are a number of ways that we could do this. We can format them based on their values. We can format them based on what they contain, based on their rank, based on their average, and here we've found the standard deviation options. So if we just look at that top menu, we'd say, oh, I have to calculate a formula off to the side. But as we dig into this, we can actually also get even more complex statistical options, like one standard deviation above or below. We can also format unique or duplicate values, and we can use a formula to customize what those rules are. Let's cancel this and we'll go back to our conditional formatting menu. In addition to being able to follow rules here, we can also format things based on their values. So for example, if we wanted to format this lead time, we'll select this, we'll choose conditional formatting, we'll choose data bars, and we'll do a solid fill bar here. This is one way that you can quickly visualize what the data is in each of your cells without having to create a chart onto the side. We can see that 16 ends up being our top and a duplicate lead time in weeks. We can also see relatively quickly that it seems like 1 is the smallest, followed closely by these options for 2 weeks. Let's take a look at one more example with icon sets. If we select our order quantity here, and we go to conditional formatting, we choose an icon set, we can also choose any of these different shape options. Let's just choose the basic red, yellow, and green. And here it's going to guess what that red, yellow, and green should represent. But if we go into the edit rule dialog box here, you'll see that we can actually set it based on a percent, a specific number, or a percentile. So if we say anything that is greater than or equal to 80 is going to be green. When it's yellow, that means it will be less than 80, this first value, and greater than or equal to 20. And when it's less than 20, it will be red. Now we can also customize each of these icons here. So for example, if on the red side, we wanted to do a red X here at the bottom to say we're going to actually cancel that order. We can choose, make sure to choose number so that they're matching. We'll choose 20 and we'll click OK. When we click apply, you'll notice that we can quickly see these order quantities are so small, we may want to consider canceling those orders if that's the logic that we're applying here. Another example of conditional formatting that I want to make sure that you're aware of is under the Highlight Cells Rules button. There's the option to highlight based on a date occurring. This can be very helpful if, for example, you have a list of dates and one of those is maybe yesterday's date with finalized or actualized data for the day. You may want to highlight that specific date or even the whole row of items that that date applies to. Now, as we wrap up this video, I think the important thing to ask is where would we use all of this? On a small list like this, it might be interesting to be able to see the entire set of data all at once. But more often than not, you're going to be doing things in a dashboard where data is pulled in selectively. And so if we wanted to, for example, we could create an indicator, a warning indicator when data reaches a certain level. So let's say that we have a reorder point, and that's when our inventory gets below 25 units. So we'll format this as an input. And on another part of the dashboard, we pull back our current inventory. And let's say that that's an output, a calculation. In this case, I'm going to use a random number between 0 and 100. If this inventory gets below our reorder point, we'd like it to create an indicator for us that says time to reorder. So if we type in time to reorder, we'll make this a little bit larger and we'll use this conditional formatting option here. I'm going to choose a new rule and I'm going to say based on a formula. We'll start off with if this current level of inventory is less than this reorder point, then our format should be that we fill it with a bright orange color here, that we make our font a bright orange as well. We make it bold, and maybe we add a border as well, just to be extra visual. We'll click OK, choose OK, and now this has no formatting to it because 67 is above our reorder point. We could actually even, if we wanted to, we could just make the cell white and it doesn't show anything at the moment. We could also use a formula, an if formula here, to make sure that it only shows a text while there is something happening. Let's try it one more time. What if we lower this top value to 30? Now I'm below that reorder point, which means that my warning indicator here tells me it's time to reorder. Now you can make this much larger, more cells, you can make it stand out more. There are a lot of features in conditional formatting that we haven't gone over in this particular video, but it's important to note that there are a lot of customizations that you can apply, not only to a set of data, but to a dashboard as well. So as we wrap up here, we'll just call this one example 2. And we'll call our first sheet example 1. And that's our start into conditional formatting.